laugh. And they have a couple of them on here, I believe. They got a couple of Four Horsemen interviews where Ric Flair is in it, obviously. But Ric Flair, you know, his interviews were one of a kind. Ric Flair in his matches, he had that plane accident back in 1970. Oof, kind of rough on the edge there. About 75, 76, I believe it was. Almost ended his wrestling career. And if it would have ended his career, you know, who else would we be talking about from the 80s that was so influential? Ric Flair and his 16 world titles. You know, I don't think they'll ever be copied or even matched. You know, the way, and even this guy, he was the heel. He was almost a cool heel, but he made you hate him. You know, Ric Flair also too. He wasn't like the powerful heel that has to dominate the baby faces. Ric Flair was the kind of guy that he would make the baby faces, even the guys that really wouldn't have a chance, he would actually make it look like they almost beat him for the World Heavyweight Championship. And that's the kind of heels that we don't have today. We have heels that have to beat up their baby faces all the time. You know, you don't have guys that can, you know, bump around for the baby face and then get out by the skin of their teeth and retain the title. You could have the guy that, you know, he still cheats to win, but he still dominates the baby face. You know? Ric Flair in his 16 world titles. And then he has classic rivalries with Ricky Steamboat, which started back in 1977 when they battled for the Mid-Atlantic TV title. Made it to a main event feud. And who would have known that 10 years later they'd be battling for a different title, this time the top prize in the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and to a much better audience, Ric Flair and Rick Steamboat. That was a nice rivalry. Ric Flair and Sting. Ric Flair took a guy named Sting, who came over from Mid-South, or whatever that promotion was that Bill Watts owned. And Ric Flair took the unknown Sting, and he made Sting a star in a matter of 45 minutes. In a matter of 45 minutes, Ric Flair turned Sting into the superstar that we all know Sting as today. If Sting were to tell you, and I don't think Sting will ever tell you this, that Ric Flair had nothing to do with starting the career of Sting and setting onto a fast track of being a superstar, you know he'd be lying, because Ric Flair really did it in that 45 minutes. He bumped around for Sting, and, you know, Ric Flair is a classic wrestler. Ric Flair is also known as a guy known as a common denominator. People don't hear this much, but common denominators are guys that can, you know, let's say Ric Flair is to get into the ring with a guy. Oh, give me a name out there of a guy who's not that great. Again, there was Santino Marella, or even Gilbert. Remember Gilbert, the guy, the WWE's version of Goldberg? You know, kind of a mock of him. Remember that? He could take Gilbert in a 60-minute match and make Gilbert look like a superstar. That's the kind of wrestler Ric Flair is. And Ric Flair knows how to read a crowd. He knows when to, you know, he also knows the reactions at the right time. Hulk Hogan knows how to read a crowd, but he doesn't really, you know, do it at the right time sometimes. Ric Flair is perfect. You know, Ric Flair makes you hate him and everything, but staying on his common denominator thing, he could take anybody that's a worse wrestler than him, that's not even up to par with Ric Flair, that's not even in the same league. He could take them and make them a superstar in a matter of 60 minutes, you know? And Ric Flair, you know, he just wasn't good in the ring. He was good outside the ring. He never, ever was tired out in a match. You know, everybody talks about, he literally was the 60-minute man. You go back and look at Ric Flair's matches. How many matches will you look back on and see that he wrestled for 60 minutes? Today, that's almost unheard of. That's a stipulation today to work 60 minutes. Ric Flair sometimes did it weekly. He would sometimes do his 60-minute matches every single day of the week. And, you know, most wrestlers today couldn't even handle that. I can guarantee you one wrestler today can still handle that. But Ric Flair might still be able to handle it at his old age. You know why? Because he's so seasoned to it. But he trained so hard outside the ring. Wrestlers tell you about how they run into him in the gym, and he'd be halfway through his cardio workout in the morning. You know, Ric Flair never, ever tired out in a match, and that's what made him so great. And Ric Flair, he played a character on TV, you know, where he was a wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, son of a gun. He played that character on TV. You know why the character was so good on TV? Because when the show was done, Ric Flair carried that into his real life. Ric Flair really was a wheeling, dealing, jet flying, limousine riding, kiss stealing, son of a gun. He really was outside of the ring. You know, you hear all the stories, all the parties he had with all the women after the shows. He always tells you how he flies in on those jets, you know, those nice private jets that he always had. He always rode in limousines. He always had the fanciest cars. He really was Ric Flair outside of the ring as he was in the ring. And Ric Flair really was a party boy. And, you know, staying with Ric Flair, you know, tell you what, here is my own prediction. It has to do with Ric Flair. Since last Monday night, he took Triple H's spot in the Royal Rumble. Ric Flair is winning the Rumble. He's winning it. Last time he won it for the WWE Championship back in 1992 when it was vacant. And they turned into a 30-man Battle Royal. He ended number 3 and he won it. Shows you how much of a 60-minute man he was. He stayed over there for 60 minutes too. But Ric Flair, I guarantee you this. He will enter the Rumble this January and he will win it. Ric Flair will win the Royal Rumble. He will go into WrestleMania 24 in search of his 17th world title. And hey, that might be the night he loses. That might be the night that Ric Flair is done in professional wrestling. So I guarantee, you know, if he does do this and he goes to WrestleMania for the championship, you might want to buy it if you want to see Ric Flair's last match. But what better way for Ric Flair to go out? If he was to win the Rumble, go to WrestleMania, and fight for a title. May not win it, but put on a match of his career. But who will the title be against? You never know. You know, that's too hard to predict right now. I'd like to see it be Triple H as champion. Remember that match in 2003 where Ric Flair took on Triple H on Raw and almost beat him? Had everybody standing in his hometown of, you know, and I think it was Greenville, South Carolina or something. One of those Carolinas where he was famous, you know, where he built his career, where the foundation of his career is set is in the Carolinas. Ric Flair. Tell you what, if they could have that kind of a match at WrestleMania, a better match at WrestleMania. You know, they're best friends, and that's how they're going to gel. And they're both common denominators. Triple H and Ric Flair are both common denominator wrestlers. They'll both make each other look good. And Ric Flair has also set the mentality in professional wrestling that for you to look good, your opponent has to look good. Because, you know, you beat up a, you know, when you squash a guy, you know, you beat up a nobody, really. He really put up no offense. You know, how tough really is he? But when he almost beats you, and you get up with the skin of your teeth, that makes you look good and shows how persevere you are and sets him on his track. Which Ric Flair's done many, many times. His opponents look good, but he always ended up winning in the end. That's why Ric Flair's so great. And Ric Flair, when he does leave, we're all going to truly miss him. I think we'll see him leave by the end of 2008. WrestleMania, when it comes, I'm going to put my prediction down right now. He's going to WrestleMania fighting for a title, and he's winning the Royal Rumble. He's winning it. And now to continue on with Ric Flair, sort of. My next DVD review is of Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. You want to talk about how Ric Flair lived his character outside the ring? The Four Horsemen lived their group outside of the ring also. They just weren't an in-ring act. They were an outside the ring act. They always had parties.